Chad, from Niger. They are black and they are killing Arabs.
120 kilometers from this Tunisian border, Zawiya. The town is now in the hands of the people. But Egyptian refugees describe a bloody massacre on Thursday, which left many dead.
I was in Zawiya's Martyrs Square. There was a group of army men in the square who attacked the protesters. It was a very fierce confrontation. They were using heavy weapons, at least 15 to 20 dead, and I had footage of what happened, but the Libyan authorities on the border took my phone. Gaddafi wants to commit a crime with the absence of any media.
The problem for journalists right now is that this is as close as we can get to Western Libya. We have to rely on first-hand accounts of people coming across this border, many of them too frightened to talk about what's happening there. There are still very few Libyans crossing into Tunisia. Most of these people are forces if they ever return. Libya is where they found work and built their lives. They now have an uncertain future. Nazanin Bashiri, Al Jazeera, on the Tunisian-Libyan border.
Got to look elsewhere in the region because there's still protests going on in other countries in the Middle East. Yemen, for example, where the president suffered a setback. Several powerful tribal chiefs have announced their support for the anti-government movement, and they include leaders from his own Hashid tribe, considered the country's most powerful. Hashim Al-Barra has more from Sana'a.
A prominent leader of Yemen's most powerful tribe, Hashid, has announced he's endorsing the anti-government movement. Hussein Abdullah Al-Ahmar leads a family which runs a vast financial empire and has a huge political influence in Yemen. Importantly, Hashid is also the tribe of the president, Ali Abdullah Saleh. Ahmar's resignation from the General People's Congress, the latest in a cascade of defections from the president's ruling party and inner circle.
God willing, we will continue our protest until the regime steps down and the president leaves.
This latest defection will only serve to boost the resolve of the pro-democracy movement. Ahmar's defection came as another tribe, Bakil, also announced its support for the popular uprising. Bakil controls vast territory in the north and is widely considered the country's largest tribe. For decades, President Saleh has been building strong ties with the tribes to consolidate his grip on power. Now that Hashid and Bakil seem to be abandoning him, the president may find himself almost alone and isolated in the face of a movement gathering pace and determined to oust him. Hashim Al-Barra, Al Jazeera, Sana'a.
From Yemen, we move to Bahrain. Thousands of protesters marching again there, demanding the country's Sunni rulers stand down. The demonstrators massed at Pearl Roundabout and then marched out along a major highway. Police were deployed but didn't interfere with the demonstrations. They come as a prominent leader from the country's Shia opposition arrived home from exile. In his absence, Hassan Mashema was being tried for allegedly plotting a coup. But according to Bahrain's foreign minister, he's now been given a royal pardon, yet another concession aimed at placating the country's Shia majority. Mashema says the people of Bahrain are simply demanding change.
I mean, talking about dialogue now is not enough. Promising is not enough. We have to see something on the ground. Just by talking, because different times they promised before, but they did not do anything for the nation of Bahrain. Well, demands is up to the people on the ground who died there and who faced everything just to get their demands.
And in Algeria, hundreds of protesters have been rallying again, demanding the resignation of President Abdelaziz Bouteflika. The protest comes 2 days after the government ended a 19-year state of emergency, but Algeria's interior minister says demonstrations are still banned in the capital, Algiers. Going to look at Iraq in a moment, where the Baiji oil complex has become the target of a brazen, deadly attack.
And I'm Andrew Thomas in Christchurch, New Zealand, with the momentous clean-up task this city post-quake now faces.
Well, welcome back. I want to first take you to the United States, where we're going to see a lot of unusual weather happening here for parts of California. A low pressure area sinking down, bringing a lot of cold air with it. Los Angeles seeing some snow showers, believe it or not, in their forecast, mostly rain. But as you get a little bit higher out of the city, snow is going to be not much of a problem, but it's going to be very unusual for them. That snow is going to be moving out here towards the east, really towards New Mexico, Arizona, and also across the border into the higher elevations of Mexico. As we take a look at what's happening down in South America, very serious situations, especially for Bolivia. Over the last several weeks, we have seen extreme flooding in that region. 7,000 people have been displaced because of the rain showers. Now, over the next couple of days, we're going to get a little bit of a break right there, but the rain is going to come back, as well as Rio de Janeiro. We're going to be seeing some very heavy rain showers. Into their forecast, they could expect some localized flooding as well. Up towards Europe, very messy situation. I want to show you, though, what's going to be happening down here in the south. See this area of circulation across Italy? Well, watch what happens as we go from Sunday with this little area now into Monday. It really explodes. We're looking at a storm system right here that's going to be producing quite a bit of rain, not just for Italy, but also for the southern parts of France, as well as into Africa.
He's taken stolen goods and he's now dumping them onto the world without any sort of consideration for consequences.
From people making the news.
If the North will be saved a lot of trouble, I think it is important that they should come together.
To those it affects.
We do accept that there was very bad mistakes made in our banking area.
Behind the headlines.
Most South Koreans are not interested in reunification.
Is the inside story. At this time on Al Jazeera.
So these are the latest developments across the Middle East, starting with Libya, where the capital, Tripoli, is braced for more violence after residents said the regime is arming civilian supporters to set up checkpoints and quell any dissent. Also, reports of dozens severely wounded after a pro-Gaddafi battalion apparently opened fire near Sabratha in western Libya. Much of the rest of the country in the hands of Gaddafi's opponents. Many banks have reopened in Benghazi as the coalition now running the eastern city works to get life a little bit back to normal. Yemen too, the embattled president suffered a key setback, with key tribal leaders announcing their support for the anti-government movement. Two are from his own Hashid tribe. Let's look at Egypt, where future presidential terms look set to be limited to 8 years. One of the constitutional amendments outlined by a judicial committee appointed by the country's ruling military council. These are going to be put to referendum ahead of elections in the country. Ruling councils also apologised after military police beat protesters during overnight demonstrations in Cairo. It said the violence was the result of unintentional confrontations between the military police and the youth of the revolution. Thousands of Egyptians demonstrated again in Tahrir Square after Friday prayers calling for reforms to be enacted faster. Well, Gigi Ibrahim's a political activist who was at the protests in Cairo on Friday night. Have a listen.
Last night was the first time I saw military engage, the army engage with the military police in confrontation with peaceful protesters using electric rods and sticks and beating people. What happened was that a high general came up around 2 a.m. urging everybody to go home, to my sons and daughters, he even said, and that he has orders to clear the square. Not after a minute after that, we were pushed and shoved, and I heard the taser guns, and I was running for my life pretty much along with around 100 or so protesters. People were being arrested and beaten, and it was a very scary thing to see and to witness and experience.
Let's talk through some of these proposed constitutional amendments now. Anita McNaught, excuse me, is live in Cairo for us. Anita, the potential for a limit of 2 4-year terms as president, 8 years, same as the United States as it happens. So, I mean, that would be a very big change, bringing into line with some international standards.
Oh, it would be, and I think that will go down well with the Egyptian people. But the Egyptian constitution is a very lengthy document. with 211 articles in it, and the proposed changes that this quickly appointed committee working to and reporting to the Supreme Military Council has come up with affect only 10 out of the 211 articles. So whether these changes go anywhere near far enough to addressing the many problems that many people in Egypt have with the constitution as it stands remains to be seen. Yes, they're limiting the power of the president, and that's one of the recurring themes in the little nips and tucks they're making to the constitution as it stands, reducing the terms and also widening the selection field, because there was a sort of a closed shop that picked who the president would be, and surprisingly enough it always used to come back to one man. So they're opening up the field here. The other areas where they're tackling changes here are in the sort of nitty-gritty of running elections, and an academic I spoke to a little earlier, Kamal, suggested that this was quite deliberate, that there was a sort of pragmatic approach, given that they've got to come up with a workable election plan sometime for the next 6 months. They've tackled some of the aspects of the Constitution that most directly affect how the elections are conducted, how they're supervised, how they're managed, and how complaints are handled. So these sorts of reforms are ones that ensure that however representative the elections are, they're going to be better elections than the last time around. And the other amendments they're proposing relate to these very controversial, very intensely disliked emergency laws that Egypt is currently subject to. The protesters, as you know, have been calling for them to be lifted immediately. That isn't happening, but the amendments to the Constitution that are being proposed by this committee, and it's all got to go to referendum in 2 months' time, suggest that never again will the emergency laws be able to be imposed by one man and maintained indefinitely. Now they've got to have a parliamentary consensus and can only last for 6 months.
Does it look, Anita, like this Constitutional Committee is moving quick enough? Because in essence, that's what the protest was about on Friday night. Hurry up and make these changes happen for us.
The Constitutional Committee is moving, I think, as quickly as it's humanly possible to do, given what's at stake here. But the question will be raised tomorrow about whether they've been able to go far enough. And here is the dilemma that everyone is having to deal with here. Because on the one hand, the reforms that the protesters are asking for go far, far beyond any of the changes that have been proposed in these amendments by this committee. But to make those sort of broad-based reforms, you need much more time. And time is what no one has here. Everyone is aware that there has to be a shift. That shift needs to be consolidated by elections. Elections need to be credible. But to give you an idea, Kamal, of the sort of enormous issues that aren't being